All right, let's talk about Mickey 17. So, where do we begin with this film? Before we even talk about the movie itself, there's a ton of things around the movie. So, this is a film written and directed by Bong Joon-Ho, who is probably best known for writing and directing Parasite, a movie that was kind of a cultural phenomenon and ultimately won a bunch of Oscars, including the Best Picture, becoming the first foreign language film to win Best Picture. But Bong Joon-ho has been making fantastic movie after fantastic movie for a while now. In fact, I have a list on my letterbox of the best movies I've ever seen. I think it's up to like 40. Bong Joon-ho is the only director who I currently have 3 movies on that list of, which are Memories of a Murder, Mother, and Parasite, of course. So this is someone who I think I really hold in high regard, and quite frankly, he might be my favorite director currently working. And so when you hear him tackle a subject like Mickey 17, which is a sci-fi movie starring Robert Pattinson, where essentially the plot is there's someone known as an expendable, that's played by Robert Pattinson, named Mickey 17. Essentially, it's in the actually pretty near future where they are colonizing certain planets, and while they're doing that, they have someone known as an expendable who essentially can die, and they then just reprint a new body and a new person for that person. So, Mickey 16 dies, now there's Mickey 17. This is actually based on a book which I read prior to watching this movie, although I will say it is very different. We can get into some differences later on in this review, perhaps, but it is a very different experience reading the book and watching the movie. As Bong Joon-ho said himself, he kind of liked some of the concepts in the book, but want to take it in very different directions, and to be honest, I think that's the right call. I read the book. A good chunk of the book is kind of almost talking about like a history lesson with these other colonized planets that either worked out or didn't work out, which some people are into. It wasn't fully my thing. It did feel like there's a lot of backstory, almost like 2/3 of the book is backstory, and Bong Joon-ho cut a ton of that out, and a lot of the backstory that was in the film was changed for the film, and again, we can get into some of those differences later, but right off the bat, this might be a surprise to see Bong Joon-ho go for something so sci-fi-y, but really, again, if you're familiar with his filmography, this is actually kind of very in line with what he likes to do, with Okja, with Snowpiercer. This is kind of his third American film where he's gone sci-fi, which is interesting. It's also worth mentioning, this movie took a while to come out. It was delayed for about a year because of, well, people have speculated, is it a Zaslav versus Bong Joon-ho fight? We don't actually know anything. It's all speculation, but we do know that it had been, at one point it was going to be released in January, which is essentially where films go to die, so it felt very confusing. Ultimately, it gets a March release, which is better than January, certainly, and here we are today. Finally, I have seen Mickey 17. Does it live up to the hype? Well, I would say, how can it live up to the hype of Parasite? But I really enjoyed this movie. I had a blast watching this. I thought that it was very funny. It's almost more of a comedy than anything else. I think that would be the main thing I would describe it as, is a comedy first, although it definitely has some darker moments. And Bong Joon-ho is very much known for blending comedy and serious moments together. Often you'll have very serious moments, right after you'll have a very funny moment. He knows how to blend those together. We definitely have to talk about the cast in this, and I think Robert Pattinson really deserves a massive shout out. It's unfortunate that these kind of performances don't usually get recognized come Oscar time, because this is such a difficult thing he has to pull off. Not only is he, playing a character, he's playing 2 different characters, because the way the plot works, this is in the trailer, it's not a massive spoiler, but he one day, thinks he has been killed. He goes back, he turns out that he survives. He goes back in bed, and Mickey 18 has now shown up. So now there are 2 of them. So Pattinson is playing 2 characters throughout this movie, and they are characters. They're not just, one-dimensional beings. They change, and depending on the situation, they change, and they change throughout the movie as well. So he has to play them that way. I also want to talk about Mark Ruffalo, who might be the biggest change from the book to the movie. So in the book, his character, Marshall, is very much I feel like a stock general type guy of he's kind of concerned about rations. He feels like someone you can kind of understand what he's doing and just a bit of a hard ass, but like that's just kind of how he is. This movie definitely took him in a very different direction. Took him in I think the comparisons are there. I don't think this is me making any leaps, in a very Donald Trump-esque character of definitely it felt like Ruffalo's performance was in large part based on Trump. Some of the mannerisms and some of the word choices they felt deliberate to me, although this is again a lot more just smart than your typical anti-Trump thing of I think that you could definitely read more out of it than just that. It didn't just feel like, we've seen that kind of get done to death in very annoying ways at times. And it's worth mentioning this was prior to the 2024 election as well that this movie was created. But still, you can definitely see those comparisons there. But just in general, so if you didn't read the book, Mark Ruffalo's character of Marshall is this political figure who then ends up being the leader of the entire ship. In the book, all that political stuff wasn't there. All the political stuff now has been added, and Toni Collette's character was not in the novel as well. And I do think this choice by Bong Joon-Ho to add that element of it really did, I think, add something to this movie, as it's impossible to ignore the political statement that he is making. Someone who is not afraid to be political, Bong Joon-Ho, again, essentially talking about the class difference between some of the people on the ship versus the higher ups. Something that again is all over all of Bong Joon-Ho's movies. So it makes sense that he added an element like that in this one. The rest of the cast was very good as well. Those were the two standouts for me. As for some negatives for this movie, I think my biggest critique of it was worse than the novel, but it still was a critique in the movie as well for me, is I think kind of 3/4 of the way through the movie, it just feels kind of small. Like not a ton has happened. It almost feels closer to like a pilot of a TV show than anything major. Now I will say it does go places in the final act. This is it definitely I think sticks to landing for me personally. I don't want to spoil anything, but it definitely sticks to landing for me there. But as a whole, I think that's probably my biggest complaint is while this is in large part a comedy, I could have maybe dealt with it's going a little bit quicker earlier on. That's just me personally. But for Bong Joon-Ho, who again I think is one of the great directors currently working, does this live up to his top tier stuff? In my opinion, no. I still think Parasite and Memories of Murder and Mother clear this movie by a decent margin, but it kind of fits right in with Snowpiercer and Okja. Might even be my favorite out of those three of his American films. Okja was half in Korean, half in English. Snowpiercer was, I believe that was American, at least in English. And then Mickey 17, which I guess was a different world, but was in English as well. With I guess not. Is Robert Pattinson is not American? No, he's English, right? But you know what I'm trying to say. English-speaking films is what I should have said instead of American. But out of those three, I think this fits right in with that, and is I think kind of for me is personal, like perfectly like a tier 2 Bong Joon-Ho movie. I'll do a Bong Joon-Ho tier list at some point, and I'll put his movie exactly where I want it to be after I have a couple moments to digest it. But as a whole, again, I really enjoyed this movie. I think there was no part where I was bored during it. I think it was an incredibly entertaining film, and one that is definitely, I think, something that you could, I think that you could take just about anybody to this movie and they would have a good time. Bong Joon-Ho, incredible entertainer, and successfully does make an entertaining film here. But ultimately, those are my thoughts. I haven't seen anything. I avoided all reviews and everything because I wanted to go into this movie blind, and I had a very good time. So let me know in the comments below. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you think I'm too high in this movie, too low? I don't think I need to get into spoilers here. I think I can just end it there. But yeah, those are my thoughts on it. I could get more into the differences in the novel and the movie. I think those things are interesting, but if hopefully I didn't bore you too much talking about that. But yeah, those are my thoughts on Mickey 17. They even talk about it's different. He killed him off 10 more times. Made a movie just to kill him off 10 more times, which makes sense. You can't. Only 6 deaths was way too little. You had to make it 16. That just works way better. That was the correct call by Bong Joon-Ho as well. Yeah. I guess I could give you a recommendation on the book if you want. I don't think it's one you have to really check out if you really like this one, unless you really found the idea of colonizing different planets interesting, because that's what a lot of the book is going into, and if that's like your kind of thing, I think then check it out. But as a whole, to me, this is an example of a movie surpassing the book. This feels like kind of out of the Kubrick school of thought of, here's a cool book, I'm going to throw out 70% of it and make a different movie based on it, which is what Kubrick used to do at times. Feels like Bong Joon-Ho did that here, and I think to success. So yeah, those are my thoughts. What are yours? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from y'all, and of course, as always, thanks for watching. Oh, I never give my rating. How do I forget my rating? I'm in between a 7 and 8. I'll go 8 out of 10 because I had a good time. So if I have a good time, I'll bump it up a little bit. 8 out of 10 for me for Mickey 17. Really fun watch.